So you got a nice three-headed monster there that teams will have to deal with and can really wear you down. They'll hit you.
We've heard glowing reviews of Xavier Brown, the freshman corner.
I think all these picks have been really good. I just think that I've won. That's all. This episode of Beat Everyone is brought to you by Broadway Joe's Fantasy Sports. Inspired by football legend Joe Namath, embrace the thrill of daily fantasy sports like never before in an app coming this fall. Welcome to Beat Everyone. I am Ben Flanagan, and fall camp is underway in Tuscaloosa. We're only a few weeks away from actual football in Bryant-Denny Stadium, and joining us to now fill in the blanks and fill us in on everything that's happening under new Alabama head coach Kalen DeBoer, our AL.com reporters Matt Stahl and Nick Kelly. Guys, welcome. Your coverage has been excellent in the offseason, but we're about to arrive at something that nobody expected at the start of 2024, the first Alabama football season without Nick Saban as head coach in nearly 2 decades, which is just absolutely insane for everybody in Tuscaloosa. We're all still processing it, mourning it in some cases, but a lot of fans, the way I want to start this is a lot of fans, they read your stories, they follow you on social media, but they may not be aware of what it means to actually cover the team during the season. And Matt, I'll start with you. When you're at practice and you guys get a media window, you get limited access and limited time, but how much time do you actually get to watch the team when they practice, and how do you spend that time? What are you looking for when you're limited?
It's right around 20 minutes usually. We've been going from the 4th period to the 8th period. I think they're 5-minute periods. So yeah, right around 20 minutes. We mostly get individual periods, which makes it really hard. Like I try not to be like the armchair analyst, like, oh man, Jalen Milroe completed that pass against no defense. Alabama's really going to go crazy on offense this year. But like you look for things. I mean, obviously you sort of like look around, like, is anybody missing? Is anybody in a black jersey that like isn't ordinarily in a black jersey? I know that's the thing Nick Saban always disliked, but like it's kind of the job. It's what you do. But beyond that, I'm just sort of looking for interesting moments in the practice. You know, I generally write our sort of like all-encompassing observations, and then Nick will focus on a position group. So I was looking around like, are they doing any new drills? Can we glean anything off of like, is the entire offensive line lining up to like maybe where we could glean who's kind of practicing with the first team at this point? So yeah, it's a lot of stuff like that. Like I'm sort of I guess a rarity among some beat writers in that like I don't see as much value in kind of these practice windows as a lot of people do, but I'm just always looking for something a little interesting.
Nick, are you the same way? I mean, like, I've been to many practices and I see reporters just feverishly writing in their notebooks or typing on their phones, just trying to glean anything and everything that they can. Like Matt mentioned, missing players, but there seems to be an art to mastering the practice window. How do you do it?
I mean, I don't know what Matt's talking about. Based on what I've seen, I think Alabama's winning a national championship. I mean, they've looked fantastic. I mean, those throws against air have just been so crisp. I mean, I'm crowning them now. I got some texts, people with like day one of practice who were like, how are they looking? Natty coming, like, hey, let's slow that down a little bit. But no, he's spot on in that you can't glean a ton. It's just more, you just look for what's interesting. And basically what I do when I look at different positions, it's just, okay, what's the pecking order like? Who's taking leads in drills? Like who's going first? Like, for example, defensive line. There's a lot of shuffling through drills, but Tim Keenan was almost always the first guy through drills. So that was something I could ask him about. Like, why is that important to him to lead the way? And he said, well, essentially, and this is me paraphrasing, but if he's going to talk back to teammates and tell them, hey, you need to do this better, he wants to show them first that he did it. So he feels like lead by example is what he needs to do. So there are things like that you can glean, you can ask about. So I think it does help inform some reporting, or you can see some moments like Tyler Booker in through basically a walkthrough, had a full head of steam and decided to basically put a walk-on offensive lineman on his butt, which he just couldn't help himself. So no, we're not seeing live football. We're not seeing 11 on 11, no team drills, but you still get a sense of kind of who's leading, who's doing interesting things, and yesterday we saw a drill where, or I should say on I think it was, Wednesday of last week. I mean, we saw this drill where the quarterbacks had to throw through dummies as receivers tried to hold on to the ball, running across the field. And then they also had to avoid an arm, like a dummy arm, swinging at them, trying to take the ball out, while a rolling exercise ball tried to also take them out, kind of thing. So it was very interesting drill. So that's not necessarily going to tell us Alabama is going to finish, 10-2 or 11-1 or something, but it still is interesting. And I find trying to look for things like that. And you never know when an ice cream truck will show up in practice too. So
yeah, I want to ask you about the ice cream truck here in a minute, but the Tim Keenan thing that you mentioned, I know that a lot of coaches probably preach this to players, but what he said there sounded a little bit like a Sabanism, right? Something Saban used to preach a lot was be somebody that other people want to emulate, right? Like you want to lead by example, essentially, on the field. And quick thing on Nick Saban as it relates to Kalen DeBoer, it was always easy to spot Nick Saban out on the practice field with the straw hat. He was always active, working with defensive backs, a lot of chatter, very vocal. Where is Kalen DeBoer? And Nick, what is he normally doing during practice?
Yeah, you have to see him flow a little bit, but usually if you're looking for him, the best place to look, at least in these individual drills, tends to be where the quarterbacks and maybe the receivers are, kind of thing. Like he tends to be around offensive drills. And yesterday, or even when we were at practice recently, there were some moments where Jalen was not going through drills. And when he wasn't, he was talking with DeBoer. DeBoer and him were having a conversation. So, yeah, I think DeBoer kind of hovers, and that makes sense. He's on the offensive side of the ball, but he also can be all over the place. So you never quite know where he'll pop up.
Matt, what's different about watching practice with this coaching staff compared to the previous staff? I know that they play music. I don't know if the players are getting yelled at quite as much. We've heard that DeBoer doesn't use quite as much profanity. I don't know if that's true since you've been watching him, but what are the key differences that you've noticed?
Well, reporters haven't been dog cussed by anybody yet. That's new. I got to the Alabama beat last season, so it was like the days of watching practice, other than when they were obligated to give us 15 minutes at the Rose Bowl, were kind of done. But yeah, I mean, there's music now. It's in the morning, which as a notorious late riser, not great for me. But I think is good for everybody, given that it's 83 degrees at the start of practice and not 96. It gets hot out there in Tuscaloosa, but yeah, it's little stuff like that. And I mean, yeah, DeBoer's hanging out kind of more with the offense, but he's talked to us a little bit about, he wants every player to believe in him, caring about their development. And to do that, he does float around during practice. I've seen him standing near Kane Womack and, Colin Hitchler with the safeties, just taking in the defensive workouts, encouraging. But yeah, it's I've not heard him dog cuss anybody either out on the field. He sort of leaves that to Kane Womack, based on the videos I've seen of Nick Saban during practice, sort of filling that role as the guy who's going to tell you exactly what's going wrong. So, and yeah, there was an ice cream truck. So that's I don't think that was happening a lot under Nick Saban.
You say Womack, but you know that 99.9% of people in Alabama are going to call that guy Womack, right?
Yeah, they're wrong.
Well,
it's not how you say it.
Like it or not.
Womack.
Like it or not. Okay, let's get to the ice cream thing. You mentioned it twice here. It's the talk of the town right now. It's the talk of practice. Nick, you wrote about this. Did we read this right? There was an ice cream truck at practice. That's a first. I can't recall that ever happening during the Saban era.
Don't think it did. And frankly, I'm just salty that we didn't get access to the ice cream truck, because that's my weakness. I was kind of sad that I wanted ice cream after practice. Frankly, when you hear that music, it doesn't matter how old you are, you know the ice cream truck's around. But yeah, they rolled an ice cream truck at the end of practice. It was the first full day of, or I should say, first practice with full pads. And so a little treat, a little reward. Jeremy Bernard talked about, and he was a guy with DeBoer at Washington. The DeBoer would do similar things like that at Washington, with bringing different food trucks and rewarding guys. And I think that's just DeBoer's way of trying to keep things fresh, trying to keep things fun, and reward guys for hard work. So I don't think there's any grand thing to read into it. But of course, it is different seeing an ice cream truck roll up to practice.
Yeah. That's the point I'd like to make about that is like, I think people got maybe a little brain poison during the Saban years as to stuff like this, because like I've covered other programs and like stuff like this happens, right? Like when I was covering Mizzou, Eli Drinkowitz would trot out food trucks to the field, once a week. It's just a thing. Like it's not, it wasn't news other places, I guess. It's just, there's so much stuff kind of changing from the Saban years, and it did last, like those years did last so long, and kind of the cultures around college football changed so much during those times. So I think maybe Alabama fans are just like sort of like having a tough time like bringing their brains up to the new kind of the new way of things.
They're getting brain freeze with the ice cream. Listen, it's because it's soft. That's their perception of it, right? It's like they're eating ice cream and they're I'm sure they're teddy bears, and I'm telling you, this is the way that a lot of them are going to perceive it in the post-Saban era, right? And you even mentioned practicing in the mornings, right? Like that's obviously a slightly different approach. Saban used to run those guys and hold hard practices in the dead heat. The dead heat of Alabama summers. So I guess you wonder, like, why are they now practicing in the mornings versus the afternoon? Maybe when Saban was trying to condition them for those types of for that type of environment. So it's really interesting. And another big change has been access to assistant coaches, something that Saban only allowed once a year with coordinators and never at all with position coaches outside of the playoffs. Nick, how has that access broadened our understanding of the team and culture?
Yeah, I think that, they're fun to talk to because it just gives you different personalities and you get to know some more of the people that you cover. But also it gives you a chance to really get a sense of the mindset of each position. Because, the head coach sets the tone for the team, but the position coach sets a lot of the tone for that group. I mean, Jeremy Bernard talked about the big reason why he followed DeBoer from Washington to Alabama was that Jamarcus Shepard came along. I mean, Shep was the biggest reason that Jeremy Bernard came to Tuscaloosa. And so those position coaches are hugely important to what each player does. And so I think that getting to talk to them, you get to hear from, just to use Jamarcus Shepard as an example again, he talked about the other day how he wants his defensive or his receivers to basically stress out defenses. Like that's the mindset he wants them to have. And we don't know that unless a player tells us that, and because that's not likely something the head coach would think to tell us, kind of thing. And so, you get little glimpses of what these players are being taught by talking to these assistants.
Yeah, and focusing on DeBoer, Matt, he's obviously known as an offensive guru. I've seen people this week compare him to like Steve Sarkisian, just in terms of the level of offensive mind he appears to be. He certainly had so much success at Washington, has had success literally everywhere that he's coached. But I wonder, what has been your impression so far of Jalen Milroe and the offense around him and the install that DeBoer has put in at Alabama? Has Jalen Milroe changed in any way? I know it's been a relatively short time since the end of the last season, but it's been a crash course. And have you noticed any differences with Jalen Milroe so far?
Man, he's completed every pass I've watched him throw against the air out there. It's been it's been a sight to behold. But no, I mean, I think Jalen Milroe is in a pretty good position just because of you could sort of only look at Kalen's, I guess, past performance with quarterbacks. It's been really, really good. Like Jake Hayner's in the NFL, and obviously Michael Penix Jr. was a Heisman finalist last year. And I think it's an offense that has historically been very quarterback friendly, has gotten quarterbacks into the NFL. I think, and very obviously that's where like Jalen Milroe wants to be next. It's probably going to be next. So, it's a lot different. I certainly think he'll put up some numbers. I guess some of the question has been like, Kalen has historically done some stuff that like isn't necessarily been Milroe's strong suit. But like Milroe says every time we talk to him that he's not a finished product. Like we watched him get better sort of week on week on week last season. So like I don't think like he's not where he's going to be next. He was already getting Heisman votes last season. But also, I mean, Kalen and the offensive coaches have talked about like we're not hard and fast running, exactly what we did at Washington, at Fresno, Sioux Falls, wherever. Generally, like if you're a good offensive coach, you've got a playbook that's like this thick. And then like if you're coaching Washington, this is going to be terrible audio. I just realized this, but for Washington, you might run this portion of the playbook, and for Alabama with Jalen Milroe, you might run this portion of the playbook. And it's all about like finding out what Milroe likes, what Milroe can thrive in, what the like current personnel allows you.
Yeah, and just seems like philosophically it requires a lot of buy-in, right? And Jalen Milroe kind of became the face of buying into DeBoer in that he stayed at Alabama, and it seemed like he kind of influenced other players to stick around, whereas, a handful of other players went to the transfer portal, obviously. But Nick, do you notice, again, like sort of philosophically, he seems like a positive guy. He seems like someone who always wants to learn. He was front and center at SEC Media Days, but it seems like Jalen Milroe has a positive mental attitude, because I'm sure you have to if you want this all to succeed. But Jalen seems like he is in some ways at least thriving to some extent, at least publicly, under Kalen DeBoer so far.
Yeah, another way to put that, I mean, he just seems like he's having fun. Yeah. It's very easy to get just a vibe that he's enjoying himself. And I think he can do that when he's not in a competition like he was before, and he has his coach's confidence, and he's got experience. I mean, look at all the experience he got last year with anything, our jobs, his job, anyone's job. The more experience you have, the more fun you can have with it, and the more confident you can be in it. So I think that is coming through his attitude. He's just got an infectious kind of personality that way as well. But one thing I'll add too, just based on the previous answer from Matt, like to his point, the offense will probably not look identical to what Washington did with Michael Penix, because Michael Penix is a much different quarterback than Jalen Milroe. And I think that the misconception has been that, maybe they're similar quarterbacks, so we'll see similar offense. Like, no, the coaching staff knows that Jalen Milroe has a different skill set and has different abilities. And they're going to tailor their play calls and their offense to him. They're not going to try to make him fit into what they did with Michael Penix.
Yeah, Nick, I just want to follow up on the limited time and access. Based on what you've seen so far and been able to hear around the program, what are Alabama's biggest position strengths right now? We have Jalen Milroe coming back. There were a lot of guys on the offensive line coming back, but I think depth has obviously been a concern for a lot of fans. What do you think is the biggest position strength for the team right now?
I'll say running back. I've heard some really good buzz about Justice Haynes, Jam Miller, and for good reason. That makes sense, right? I mean, we've seen a little bit of them. They've made plays, especially Jam, we've seen a little bit more of. But from what I can tell, I mean, the hype is well met there. They have great depth there. Richard Young, I think, is a really intriguing prospect there for what he can do with Miller and Haynes being kind of top two guys. So you got a nice three-headed monster there that teams will have to deal with and can really wear you down. They'll hit you. And then they have some younger freshman running backs that will probably develop into good players as well. But for now, it's kind of the main three-headed monster that I think is the biggest strength of this team right now, and something that they might rely on as they try to get some, I think, chemistry and development with the passing game between Milroe and the receivers.
Matt, Saban's exit and, as I mentioned, a very active transfer portal created those depth concerns for this team that is in transition. Are there any significant weaknesses that people are kind of buzzing about right now?
Yeah, I mean, the very obvious one, the one that Nick Saban sort of mentioned when he was on the SEC Media Days telecast, was defensive backs, which was, I mean, that was pretty much what he coached. He was, alongside being one of the best head coaches of all time, he was one of the best defensive backs coaches of all time. Like, he and Bill Belichick invented pattern matching, right? Like, it was a big deal to go play for Nick Saban. And then they lose. Terry and Arnold and Kool-Aid McKinstry are in the NFL. Caleb Downs sort of leads the trade out of town in the transfer portal. They got beat up pretty good there. So that's they have some good talent there. Like Malachi Moore, I think is, it's obvious what he is. I think Keon Sabb, who transferred in from Michigan, this could be a big piece kind of there at safety. Domani Jackson transferred in at corner from Southern Cal. But beyond that, they're really, really, really young. So I think that's a concern, but we'll see as it goes along. We've heard like glowing reviews of Xavier Brown, the freshman corner, who like seems like he really has potential to start out there. They also brought in Deshaun Jones from Wake Forest to compete at corner. Jalen Milroe, who another 5-star freshman who could be really good. So a lot of youth. So I think that'll be like one of the questions early in the season, especially, you go up against a offensive juggernaut in Western Kentucky, the first game of the season. So that'll be a real test right off the bat. The school is an excellent journalism program, I might add. But yeah, I think that's something that as the season goes along could become like less and less of a concern. I think as those young guys sort of get that game experience, figure out what it takes to play in the SEC, figure out more of the defensive schemes and all that.
Well, we've seen this week that the SEC may require mandatory injury reports in the 2024 season. And look, y'all may disagree, but I always felt like Saban, for the most part, was relatively transparent about injuries during his time as the head coach. But what about right now, Nick? Are there any notable injuries to speak of?
Yeah, nothing that's crazy notable. I mean, a few guys are banged up. I mean, you got Xavier Brown, who's been dealing with a little, I think, hand or wrist injury that he's had to wear a club at practice, but he's kept practicing. So I think he's going to be fine. So nothing immediately stands out, but obviously they'll want to get Xavier Brown's hand, I think it's his left hand, ready to go, just because there's a very good chance he could be starting for that first game, just like he was at A-Day.
Well, and so finally to both of you, and we'll start with Matt. With a handful of practices under your belts, Nick joked about it, they're ready to win the national championship. But what do you know about this team that you didn't know before?
Oh, boy. That's a good question. Going back to Xavier Brown, that's probably the answer. It's just like how good they feel about him as like a possible starter at cornerback, even as a freshman. He's been getting rave reviews just across the board. It's sort of like Kalen DeBoer and others have said they don't really even think of him as a freshman, right? And it's here in spring, has picked it up so quickly. So I think his emergence as like a real possible contributor for that secondary is probably the thing for me.
Nick, what about you?
I'm going to stay on defense, but I'm going to go to defensive line. To me, we knew that they had experienced depth. We knew that they were bringing a lot of guys back. They have a lot of options. But I think there's some real potential with that group. Kalen DeBoer, after the first week of camp, was talking about how they're maybe the most consistent group right now. And he was praising that defensive line. And it makes sense. You've got veterans. You've got talent there. And so I think of that group, and just watching them some too in practice, like they've got some dudes. And so whether that turns into a dominant defensive line, I don't know. But I think it's going to be really fascinating to see how they develop through the season, just because they will have a slightly different role in this defense, and they will need to, I think, produce more pass rush than maybe the quote-unquote defensive lineman needed to under Nick Saban. And that bandit role as well with LT Overton, Jamarian Latham, those two looked good in practice. They got a lot of praise from Freddie Roach as they were going through drills. And so I think the thing that I've learned is that this defensive line is in pretty good shape, and I'm really intrigued to see them play some football.
Well, Kane Womack, ice cream trucks, rising stars in the secondary. I feel like I've learned a lot from you guys already, and y'all don't have a lot to work with, and it's just amazing the information y'all can pull from practices. Y'all are doing an amazing job. We've got Matt Stahl, we've got Nick Kelly, the Alabama AL.com reporters, and we're going to come right back and see if these guys know anything about eating in Tuscaloosa. So stick around on Beat Everyone. We're going to take a quick break. Welcome back to Beat Everyone. I'm Ben Flanagan, and we are once again joined by AL.com's Alabama reporters Matt Stahl and Nick Kelly. And also Matt Scalici is with us right now. Matt, what are we doing now?
Guys, we're going to play a little game here. We're going to take the three of you and your expertise on your beat coverage area of Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and we're going to put it to the test in a draft of the best places to eat in Tuscaloosa. But we're gonna apply some pretty hefty rules here. So it's your job to build a full roster. And what I mean by that is you're going to each need to draft a place to eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You can do it in whatever order you want, but you must fill that roster by the end of this draft. So we'll start. I'm gonna randomize the order here and say, Nick Kelly, you're gonna go first, and we'll snake draft this for 3 rounds here. So Nick, you have the first choice. Ben will be in the middle, and Matt, you'll round it out for the first round.
Do I need to specify which meal that I'm drafting it for?
I think that's. I mean, look, you can have some flexibility here and switch it up over the course of the draft if you change your mind. But it's got to end with one for each.
Okay, I'm going to start out with the first overall pick in this draft. Will go to Southern Ale House for my dinner pick.
Tell me about Southern Ale House, Nick. It's been a while since I was a resident of Tuscaloosa. What's the deal?
I mean, it's good stuff. Like it's close to Northport, but I've eaten there way too much. Their biscuits are incredible. Biscuit sandwiches are really good, and it could be a lunch spot or a dinner spot. That's why maybe I end up moving that to my lunch pick, but I probably have kept them in business a good bit.
There are no moving categories, by the way. You've made your pick. It's over. It's locked in.
Look, you can draft a flex and move him around if you need to. Ben, what's your second overall pick here?
I like Southern Ale House. It's a good pick. It's a surprise number 1 overall pick. I will say I'm gonna go very local here. This is old school. I had breakfast with Matt Stahl here the day after Nick Saban retired. For breakfast, I'm going the Waysider. It's just tried and true Tuscaloosa, one of the best breakfasts you'll ever have. Arguably the best biscuits I've ever had. So the Waysider is that's the number 1 overall pick, guys. Come on.
I started typing Waysider before you even said the pick. When you said breakfast, I knew what you were going with. All right, Matt, let's round it out for the first round here.
Man, that's tough because I was definitely going to pick Waysider here. I love Waysider. That was the first time I'd been there. Was the day after Nick Saban retired, so it was a strange day for that. But I'll go first pick. I think it's going to be my dinner choice, and it is going to be Druid City Brewing.
Whoa!
Which is, and they'll do some barbecue out there, which is spectacular. Anything with their Al Pastor chicken on it, I think is worth getting. Obviously, the beer is great. They've got a watermelon wheat on tap right now that I think is really special. But they've got pretty good pizza. All their specials are great. Generally, they'll always be trying something sort of creative. They make chorizo out of Conecuh sausage. Anything with that on it's great. Good pretzel, the whole deal. So that'll be my dinner pick.
That's a modern icon of Tuscaloosa. That's an excellent pick there. And you also run by one of the most lovable guys in the entire city. Everybody loves Bo. What a great pick, Matt. You get to go again immediately because we were snake drafting this. So what is your next pick?
All right. It could be a dinner pick, but they are also open for lunch. I'm going De Palma's Italian, downtown Tuscaloosa. Just really, really good Italian food. I think as good as you're going to find probably in the southern United States. Got plenty of options. Had some, ravioli and some butter sauce there. That's really good. Really, I've never had a bad dish there, I don't think. And they are open for lunch, so that'll be my lunch pick.
Kind of the classic, when you are a student at UA, it is the classic place where you go with your parents when they're visiting.
Yes. It is where I went when I came down to Tuscaloosa to interview for this job. They took me there.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Strong first impression then. That was high on my board, and I'm going next here, but De Palma's is great. You're right about the lunch. The lunch menu is great. Meatball sandwich, fantastic. Calzones, pizzas, pasta De Palma. Great stuff, man. Good pick. I'm going to keep it, again, local, a traditional favorite. I'm going lunch this time, and I do consider this Tuscaloosa. If we're talking like Tuscaloosa County, others will say, no, it's Northport. but it's Tuscaloosa. I'm going City Cafe for lunch. City Cafe is just, you can't go wrong. One of the greatest meat and threes in Alabama history. What's the space you're making, Matt? You don't understand meat and three culture. You've only been here for about 5 minutes. So I don't really.
Nashville. We invented meat and threes. That's our whole thing.
It's too sanitized in Nashville now. It's not really. It's not really what it used to be. I think we can all
like
agree
the
on
vegetables that come out of a can instead of a cafe.
What did you grow up eating? What did you grow up eating in the South? That's how you do it, man.
You don't pull the veggies like directly out of a can and like pour them onto the plate.
That's what it's all about, man. You gotta look. You're making do with what's available to you. I gotta say, I'm very biased, obviously, as a Bama grad. And I'm roughly the same age as Ben also. But man, these are some out of the park hits so far.
I've won the draft already. I mean, it's over. We can call it. Unless Nick just completely.
Nick is up next with 2 straight picks here to close his board out. Nick, big pressure on here.
I feel like Ben's playing the hits though. Those are the
fair.
classics, and you can't go wrong with the classic. But I also I like to live in today as well, and so I would say
playing to win, Nick. I play to win.
So I'm going to pick. So it technically could be a dinner pick, but Southern Ale House and Heat could. Well, okay, I just revealed my pick. I'm going to go with Heat Pizza. You can eat lunch there. Heat Pizza, great spot, fantastic pizza, good location. I've enjoyed many evenings there, and just a good spot. I actually ran into my first time there. I ran into Bill O'Brien, Doug Marone sitting at the bar at Heat Pizza. So that was my introduction. But I'll go with Heat, which again could serve as both, but a little newer pick, but one of my favorite places to go to in T-Town.
All right, Nick.
Wait, so Bill O'Brien, instead of giving the ball to Jahmyr Gibbs, he's studying the Heat Pizza toppings list instead. That's what he's thinking about during the game. He's not looking at a playbook. He's looking at the Heat Pizza toppings and appetizers list, thinking what he's going to get later. Guy could have been a Heisman contender, but no. Heat Pizza's on his brain.
He's thinking about hot honey or whatever.
That's right.
I didn't mean to expose him, but look, I'm just stating facts as to what I saw. But for breakfast place, I would have, and maybe I can still pick this, but probably can't. Buddy's, Wayside would have been my top pick for breakfast, but Buddy's is a place that I've gone to with friends a lot for breakfast. Solid breakfast spot in T-Town. Unfortunately, it closed recently. So I don't know if I can actually pick that. So I'll pick something newer. I'm going to go with Heritage House. One of my favorite spots to go to do work. Breakfast is great. So if I was going to go more traditional, I would pick Buddy's, but since they closed recently, unfortunately, I'm going to go with Heritage House.
A very new school roster for Nick, which is I think appropriate as a younger member of the beat, but a guy who nonetheless very experienced here and knows the city well. As he said, he's going for kind of a modern take. We could say this is sort of, a more progressive offense, whereas Ben is more of the run the damn ball so far. But Ben, you've still got one pick left.
Well, those of us who have lived here for a while know that Heritage House has been open for a couple of decades. It's just a new location down off of Jack Warner Parkway. So, Matt, you're showing your Birminghamness right now, and that's true, okay. Yes. That's totally okay. And yeah, I do play the hits. I do play to win. And for my final pick, my dinner pick, I'm going big dog here. I'm going Archibald's Barbecue.
Wow.
Arguably the best barbecue in America. It was on the board this late. Shame on both of you. And I don't know if y'all have eaten there yet, but try Archibald's this year if you haven't.
It's real good.
Great
real
spot.
Good.
Ben, what's the best item on the menu at Archibald's?
Ribs. It's ribs. It's ribs, and it's really
the
ribs
sauce over the wings.
It's the the thinner, watery, vinegar based sauce is just out of this world. It's unique. Most of the time it's more of like a pasty mustard based sauce that you're going to get at most barbecue places. And Dreamland offers that, and it's great. Dreamland's fantastic. On its best day, Dreamland can compete with anybody. But I think Archibald's gets the edge for me. And if I'm rounding out what is just a perfect draft that nobody has ever pulled off before, then I got to go with Archibald's here. I mean,
very
come on.
Strong. Matt Stahl with the Mr. Irrelevant pick here. What are you going with?
So I'm taking issue with Ben's sort of characterization of his draft here. Like, he got, I think, the best value pick in the whole thing with Archibald's this late. That was that's kind of a stunner. It was still on the board. But I mean, he also, like, he drafted a receiver with no hands in City Cafe. So like it brings the whole thing down. Like, I don't know, like, it's the Ryan Leaf of this draft.
You're a Mr. Irrelevant before we even got to this pick, Matt. I mean, give me a break here.
Anyway,
Look at all you left on the board. Like, you even wanted to know what's going to be left on the board by the time I get to my picks, and you've still fumbled the bag here.
No, I haven't, because I'm about to go to the transfer portal for my breakfast pick. It's not a Tuscaloosa original. I'm not going like I could go Waffle House and blow everybody out of the park, I think.
No, you couldn't. It's the Tuscaloosa restaurant draft.
That's too big a chain.
McDonald's biscuits.
Like, I'm fine with one with a couple. Hey, a Hardy. Let's be real here. A Hardy steak biscuit beats a lot of places. But I'll go. It's a smaller chain, pretty exclusive to SEC country. Believe it started in Oxford, so to border state, close enough to me. Big Bad Breakfast, absolutely rips. Everything on the menu I think is good. I've never had a bad experience there at any of the locations. Do I think I got as good a pick as Waysider? Probably not, but I feel pretty good, bringing in a little value to kind of round out the roster through the transfer portal here.
I will allow this pick as the commissioner of the draft. And I do think Big Bad Breakfast, I actually went there fairly recently and got the Jack Benny, which is basically an incredibly calorie dense version of an Eggs Benedict that is biscuits instead of English muffins. It's got like gravy poured all over it. It's incredible. You will definitely, that's like you're not eating lunch that day if you go to Big Bad Breakfast. I will say this, guys, a spectacular draft overall. One that jumps out at me that I'm surprised got left on the board, Ramajamas, which is, I guess, nothing spectacular food-wise, but it's very iconic to me. You could have gone with it for any of the three meals, I think. The other one, especially, I know is a favorite of Ben's, Hooligans in town, a pretty iconic place that was not chosen, but I guess free agent signings are going to be interesting.
So had we had a flex pick, Hooligans would have been my flex pick, right?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, listen, that's arguably my favorite place to eat in Tuscaloosa, or one of the best burgers in town. I mean, the potatoes are great. The wraps are great. Everything's great at Hooligans. Great people work there. Love it. If y'all haven't been to Hooligans, go to Hooligans. Fantastic. I'm talking to the beat writers, of course, not the audience.
I've never been. I've never been to Ramajamas either, even though, like, I live like within spitting distance of Bryant Denny, and I walked past Ramajamas every single game day walking to the stadium. So,
well, Nick Saban, I wouldn't feel bad because Nick Saban did it for 17 years and also didn't know Ramajamas existed until very recently.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's because, Matt, I mean, you're going to every like mainstream big box fast food place anyway. So why would you go to anywhere local like Ramajamas, or like, because you're thinking, the best local burgers, Wendy's, obviously in Tuscaloosa. None of these local places. So, I mean, good grief, it was on the board.
Hey, I'm a fast food chain restaurant defender here. I think generally they're pretty good.
I like fast food. I love fast food. There's also local fast food places too, Matt, by the way.
Esther, none of us took Taco Casa.
That's a great point, Matt. That's I would consider that for sure a Tuscaloosa local, and very, very unique. It's hard. It's one of those. It's like hard to explain to people who have not been to Tuscaloosa. Hard sell for outsiders, but it's just that it hits that good junk food spot, And
it's got like great sweet tea, like unbelievable. In that, like, the secret ingredient to their sweet tea is like 2 cups more sugar than anybody else puts in it. But yeah, shout out to Wilkin Formby, Alabama tackle, and also grandson of the founder of Taco Casa.
What a great tidbit.
My wife took me there, and to your point, so my wife's a lifelong Alabama native. Her parents are from there. and she tried to explain to me the greatness of basically the like almost with the microwavable quality to some of the taco casa like burrito or what do they call it? What's the unique thing they
Sancho's
Sancho.
burger? Oh,
Yeah.
okay. We all said something different.
Sancho's, burritos,
yeah,
taco burger.
the Sancho. Yeah, the Sancho was a new thing for me. So she tried to indoctrinate me, but I'm gonna need a little tougher sell still. So
Yeah, well, I mean, look, man, like Taco Casa is kind of like Tuscaloosa's Milo's, and I feel like Birmingham and Tuscaloosa don't really understand each other's fast food place. So like Taco Casa people don't understand Milo's and vice versa. I happen to like them both. I like them
Yeah, I
all.
like them
Everybody does their own thing, and it's all great. I think all these picks have been really good. I just think that I've won. That's all.
objective analysis from Ben there. But hey, great job, everybody. Thanks for allowing me to step in as the commissioner, Ben.
Of course. And again, Matt Stahl, Nick Kelly, people can find you on Twitter. They can find you on AL.com, and we'll make sure we put those handles up. But we appreciate everything you guys do. Y'all have been killing it during the off season, and I can't wait to see how you guys cover this season. But I know that we'll see you really soon again on the pod. So thanks to both of you for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
This episode of Beat Everyone is brought to you by Broadway Joe's Fantasy Sports. Inspired by football legend Joe Namath, embrace the thrill of daily fantasy sports like never before in an app coming this fall.